Hey, Allie, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hey, Allie.
Hi, guys.
We're excited to have you on the show today because you have quite a awesome story of you're launched out into this debt freedom journey, and you've kind of made it your point to find balance in that. I think a lot of times we always talk about being gung ho and going gazelle intense, like Dave Ramsey likes to say, but you figured out a way to kind of strike a balance with still having a life. And so that's why we wanted to have you on to kind of share some of your wisdom in that area. But before we get to that, can you just take a moment and introduce yourselves to everybody that's listening and let them know what you're all about?
Sure. So I'm Allie, and I am Nebraskan born and raised. So I've got the Midwesternness of Nebraska, just deeply rooted. So yeah, I'm a young adult. I have a full-time job. And say I'm always busy. I'm always doing all sorts of things. But personal finance has always been an interest of mine, especially since winter of 2012. I just read all the books and read all the articles, and that's kind of what started my interest. And I started the blog because my friends were already asking me all of these questions. They would call me, text me, see me in the grocery store, and they're like, what do you think about getting an IRA? And I'm like, let me tell you about that. So I already kind of became that person. So I decided to make a blog of it. And I do some personal finance coaching, just like budget coaching, to be somebody that my friends can come and talk to without judgment.
So now you're currently in the process of paying off your debt. Can you tell us how much debt did you start off with originally, and what type of debt was it? Was it like student loans or auto loans or credit cards? And now where you are currently in your process?
Sure. So I graduated from the university. I did 5 years and studied abroad. So probably $14,000 of that, of a total of $21,000 was actually study abroad. And so when I put it that way, I'm like, that's a lot of money. But I would still say that it was worth it. And then on top of that, I took out a car loan, about $9,000, so about roughly $30,000. And last winter, January through April, I did what I called paid off my debt hot and heavy, quote unquote. I just went after it. Took on a lot of side hustle, worked at a coffee shop once a week, house sat. I tell you, it was a rough job. And yeah, and then I really cut back on my spending and I went cash only. So I did that for about 4 months. And then
And how much did you knock off during that 4-month time?
I paid off the rest of my car loan, which I think it was $8,500 at the beginning of January. And I paid that off April 4th. And so it was a lot. I probably wouldn't have gone at quite a grueling pace given the opportunity again, which I think is definitely what has influenced my perception of paying off debt and pursuing balance at the same time. So yeah, I had $21,000 worth of debt at the beginning of January of 2016, and now I'm let's see, what is this? 14 months later, I'm sitting at like 8,300. So
Amazing.
Nice
And how old are
job.
you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 27.
That's
You're
amazing.
killing it. You're killing it.
Yeah. And with the car loan, there's a caveat. I did take money from savings to put that towards my car loan, but that was a big choice. And there was no fanfare when you write a check like that to the bank. They're like, thanks. And I'm like, oh, that's so much money. But I was determined to pay off the car loan so I could roll that into my student loans.
Awesome. So last January, this started for you, but what was it that kind of pushed you in this direction? What was the kind of aha moment that made you say, I don't want this debt in my life? Although it may be, no big deal to some, to me, I don't like it and I want to do something about it. What caused that to happen in you?
So I was house searching. So in the Midwest, houses are pretty cheap. I know my Canadian friends are going to strangle me because it's not cheap there. But I was house searching for the second time, and just the lack of cash flow. It was so limiting to have to pay a car loan and student loan bills, which roughly was like $400 a month. And I was like, what about the day that I could actually spend that money on the things that I want to spend it on? If I wanted to have a mortgage, there's no way I could do it and have that money wrapped up in those mandatory expenses. And so I was like, if I can pay that off, then I would kind of free up my monthly budget to be able to make those choices, whether that's buying a house or not. I ended up not buying one. mostly financial, but also because I'm not handy and my poor father would have to go fix my house all the time. So that, and when I did the math, it was like I could save thousands of dollars in interest in literally years of paying off debt. So at that point in January, I was looking at paying on my car loan for another 4.5 years. And then after that, if I didn't snowball it, I'd still be paying on my student loans for another 2 years. And so I'm like, that's 7 more years of debt. But I did the math and figured out that I could pay it off in 3 or less.
So talk about the mindset that you had to put yourself in order to say, you know what, I want to become debt free.
I'm a goal setter. And so I think like when I saw the numbers and I actually set goals for myself month to month, saying this is how much I'm going to put back every month, that made it much more attainable than just saying I need to pay off $10,000 worth of loans. That would be hard for me to comprehend and really feel motivated. The mindset really was because it was short term. I told myself the first goal was paying off my car loan. And then at that point, I could kind of go back to normal. I could go back to not using cash if I didn't want to anymore. I could get some more flexibility in my monthly budget. I think when I was paying off my car hot and heavy, I took an extra $100 out of like my normal spending budget. So it really put a crimp in my style. Friendships, winter blues, a lot of that. So it definitely wasn't the most fun season of my life, but I could say, yeah, the mindset was that I wanted it gone. And I knew that like as soon as I paid off my car, the months following that money was going to be much more purposeful going towards my student loans. It's going to knock it out that much faster.
Yeah. So you wrote an incredible article on your blog where you kind of talked about that transition into the next phase. You went hot and heavy, and then you kind of had another epiphany to where you wanted to be able to still get out of debt, but also have a life. So help our audience out with trying to find that balance. What was step one in striking that balance between the two?
I think the first step was doing the math. And there are calculators all over the internet. I use unburied.us, so UNBURY.us. And it's seriously simple. You just plug in all of your information, and you can just tweak. Like, okay, what if I put an extra $20 a month towards my loans? What if I put an extra 30? And so I kind of gave myself a range. This is what my life would look like if I was putting $350 a month towards my loans or $450. And so I kind of just went with the one that felt better. Like, that's actually reasonable. I can like go hang out with my friends and have a restaurant budget and go see Taylor Swift. Like, I can save up for clothes. I can do these things and still be responsible in paying my debt off at an earlier rate, saving on interest and saving on time. So step one was just doing the math and just saying this is feasible. And then for me, it's like an end goal. Like right now I'm 27 and a half-ish, but I plan to be debt-free by the time I'm 30. So it's like gave me kind of 18 months from the beginning of the year to really knock that out and meet that goal. And then at that point, I just picked that number and I just stuck with it. I put it in my budget and said, okay, like this is reasonable. For me, that number was $450. So I was already paying like $400 a month for my student loans and my car loan before I paid them off. So I just pretended as if I still had to pay those. And then I just took an extra $50 out of my spending money because I wanted it gone faster.
That's good.
Awesome. Now you talked about the importance of making a game plan when you're launching out on this debt-free journey. Can you kind of talk us through that? How do we come up with that game plan?
Yeah, I would say that the game plan is the basics of goal setting is that you actually like write things down. It's way more motivating to put that $8 t-shirt back at Target if you have bigger goals, like getting out of debt 5 years early. So I would say writing them down. And so for me, it wasn't just paying off my loans. It's that I wanted freedom to be able to purchase what I want. That's considered a goal as well. So even if it's not financial, to be able to travel, to be able to like feel like my motivation for managing my money, and I know it's not the same for everyone, is that I don't ever want to have to ask my parents for money. It's like, call it pride, whatever you want, but I'm like, there's a point where like I'm 27 years old, I'm an adult, and I need to take care of myself. So that's building up my emergency fund is giving me that freedom as an adult, that I don't need to kind of revert back to being 16 and asking my parents for money because I wrecked my car. Like I need to be able to have the money to bounce back if anything happens.
Now, as you started and as you've been on this journey, what is the kind of the feedback you've been getting from friends and family about the decisions that you're making and the journey that you're on?
Yeah, they've all been really encouraging. If anything, I'm probably more hard on myself because I know those goals. Um, and so, yeah, they've been encouraging. I think that they probably would have liked that I maybe loosened the reins a little bit back during my like hot and heavy debt repayment season. Um, I don't think I was that kind of a person. I was eating lots of ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, and it was not good. And like everyone's like, eat more fruit, be a healthier person. But yeah, I think my parents have really admired it too. Like they never told me we're not giving you any money, and my parents never gave me handouts anyway. My dad would slip me $20 in college for gas. But it's just this like long term, I should be able to take care of myself. And so my parents were encouraging of that as well.
So what would you say has been the toughest part of this entire journey?
I think the fact that I'm still putting money into this invisible vault of debt. Like you don't see that money. It goes away. Sure, I have a degree and I studied abroad, but like it's hard to find it motivating when that money is not building up in your savings account and you know you could do something with it. I'm paying someone back. And so I'm ready for that day to be over. And part of that, I think, is the am I depriving myself of spontaneity in my youth because I'm trying to take care of things down the road, like taking care of my debt. And that's why balance is so important for me, is because I want to know that I can be spontaneous, I can go out to lunch with my friends, but I'm also still making smart decisions by paying off my debt early, but not running myself into the ground. That's why I think the experience of paying off my car as fast as I did and the method that I did is what's motivated me to pursue balance instead.
Awesome. What do you think on this 14-month journey so far? What do you think has been the biggest lesson that you have taken away from it about life?
Okay, so I'd always heard, you don't want to be a slave to the lender. But in those 4 months, I really became a slave to my debt. So as much as we like put debt on a pedestal of like, we need to take care of this, we need to take care of this, that's all I thought about. That's why I wasn't hanging out with my friends that way. That's why I wasn't going out ever. That's why I was eating peanut butter and ramen. And I'm like, I'm not in college. What am I doing? But it was like the other end of the spectrum. So that to me painted a really good picture of what I didn't want to see long term. And I think that there's a season for that you can pay off your debt hot and heavy, but then finding a norm as well that you feel comfortable with, that you can meet your goals and achieve them too without running yourself into the ground.
Now, for somebody who wants to kind of try to figure out how to find that balance, they're in that mode where they've been kind of in hyperdrive like you were. And now they're listening to your story and they're kind of reflecting and like, man, maybe I do need to kind of, taper off a little bit. And so how would you recommend somebody finding the balance and not kind of, getting off tracks completely in an attempt to try and find that balance? What would you recommend as advice to that person?
Whatever that number is that you're trying to hit every month, evaluate that. I feel like in order to continue to be paying off your debt and be proactive, you need to set a number and just stick to it. Try that for a couple months. For me, I realized I could actually be putting more towards my debt. So I upped that number. But my starting out, I was like, I'm going to put $450 a month towards my debt. And then I upped it to $550. But I give myself that margin that if I only want to put $500 towards my debt, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. But I just kind of I have a minimum. And then anything above that is like extra applause. But I think to practically do that, I think it's looking at like a debt calculator and seeing how much time it would take you to pay things off. Because you might think, oh, but if I spend $50 less a month on my debt and it allows me a quality of life that is not like crazy. I'm not saying cut your debt payments down by $200 and like go to concerts all the time, like every weekend. Like there's still margin there. But, I lost my train of thought. Thanks. um, what was I saying? Oh, but once you do the math and you realize that like $20 here or there means like the difference in like 2 or 3 months of paying off your debt, when you measure it that way, like for me, my example of like paying off my debt in 4 months, I would have, in hindsight, would have much rather have taken 6 months to pay off that amount based on what it did to my mental health. And, an extra 2 or 3 months is not going to, like, it's not a race. You don't have to compare yourself to everyone on the internet and how fast they're paying off their debt. If it's not safe for you mentally, and how you function day to day or how you treat your family, for me, like how I treated my friends or my roommates, yeah, it kind of turned me into a bit of a zombie. And I think that that's a red flag. But practically, just compare the numbers and look and say, if it's a difference of a few months or even 6 months or a year, give yourself that margin to do it. But just know that you can be encouraged with the fact that you're paying off your debt early. But you can do it within reason.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any book recommendations that you can recommend to those who are trying to get their finances in order?
Sure. One of my favorite books, which is actually what led me into doing budget coaching, was Alexa Von Tobel's, what's it called? Financially Fearless. And so she does the 50-20-30 budget. So the idea that no more than 50% of your income is spent on essentials, 20% spent on the future, and 30% spent on lifestyle. Oftentimes people overspend on the essentials, which includes housing. They're like living in fancy apartments when they probably shouldn't be for the sake of their financial health. Or they're spending so much on their lifestyle, but they're not putting money towards their future. So this balance of those things. And then I think that those numbers are still, like, even in my coaching sessions, that's not a one size fits all. Sometimes, like, when you're straight out of college and you're not making much, most of your income is housing, or most of your expenses are housing. And you just kind of have to bite the bullet for a while, but be safe with how much you spend on your other expenses.
Awesome. Now, you are a budget coach. What would you say, how important is the budget in the process of getting out of debt? How essential is it?
Oh, it's entirely essential. I mean, the reason why I can say I'm spending $450, $500 a month on student loan debt is because nothing else is clamoring for that money in my month-to-month budget. I have it completely set aside for this purpose. Same as I have it set aside for rent or, like gas and fuel, or groceries. Like or moving money into savings. All of those to me just become non-negotiables. And so everything else, like clothing or eating out with my friends or getting coffee, those things are much more flexible. And so I have to be a little bit more, frugal or reserved. I can't go get coffee every day because I have these other goals. And I think that looking at the long term is what makes it easier to say, this is like, I'm sticking with this number.
So to the person listening right now that may be a little discouraged on their journey of getting out of debt, what would you say to them right now?
It is a journey and you're not alone. Everybody's journey is going to look different. I would say give yourself a lot of grace. Make it a routine as much as you can, but give yourself grace when like expenses are going to happen. I'm paying off my debt, but like in January, I didn't put anything extra towards my student loans because it cost $800 to do maintenance on my car. And the following week I got in a car wreck and it cost me a $500 deductible. And you're just like, yep, just going to throw in the towel on that month. Like, moving on. So it's going to take me another month to pay off my debt. It's not the end of the world. And so, yeah, take encouragement that it is baby steps in the idea that like you're paying, even if it's just an extra $20 a month or marginally more depending on how grueling you want to pay off your debt, but you're making progress. And that's the important part, is that you're not just sitting there passively hoping that your debt goes away, because that's not going to work. So the fact that like anybody would even be listening to this podcast to learn about paying off debt means you're making a step in the right direction, and you get to make your own choices from here on out.
Yeah. I think what you just hit on was very, very important. I think in way too many instances, bumps in the road pop up and it knocks people completely off. Like you talked about the fact that you had car maintenance and then a car wreck, and then that could have, like, if for the average person that's fighting their way out of debt, they might have just threw in the towel. How did you get to the place to where you overcame it and you didn't give up? Like, was that an easy place for you to get to?
I put in buffers. So I save money every month towards my car maintenance, and I call it, when in my coaching session, I call it the responsible things. Like, nobody likes putting money back for car maintenance. Nobody likes putting money back for car registration that comes around every year. That's not fun, but I do it, and it's like $40 a month I put towards my car maintenance. So that way, when I do have to go into the car auto shop, I have at least a little bit of buffer to play around with. So even this fall, like, I had a $360 bill, but I had 200 of that saved up. That to me is that much less that has to come out of October's budget because I rolled it over from other months. So even in the $800 I paid in maintenance, 400 of that was saved from previous months, and it takes such diligence to not spend that money. Like, it just does. You roll it over because you're saving for future you. I'm saving for future Allie, that when a car accident happens, it doesn't completely throw me for a loop. And I mean, that could be contradictory to some people. You're paying off debt, but you're saving money that you don't have a need for right now. Yeah, I'm saving it up as a buffer because car accidents happen. Car maintenance is a guarantee. Something will break in your house. So, like, having that buffer put back means that I can kind of take those hits a little bit softer. So for me, it was February is 2 weeks away. I'm just going to start again in February. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. Yeah, that would be my reply.
I think that's wisdom all the way around. So, Allie, can you tell everybody more about your site and how they can connect with you?
Sure. So my site is askalea.com. It's ALLEA, so Ask Allie. And on there I have what I'm so excited I recently launched. I call it the Real Life Money Guide. And it's essentially a glossary of adulting terms for my young recent grad friends. I was 25 before I knew what a deductible was, so I'm here to help everyone shorten that learning curve. But I'm also on Twitter. I love Twitter. So yeah, that's where you can find me, askalea.com.
Awesome. Allie, this has been great. It's been helpful. We know our audience took good notes and they're ready to take action on their journeys to debt freedom. So thank you so much for sharing your story with our audience today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.